What's up, YouTube universe? I hope everybody out there is doing well. I know it's been a while since I made a video. Today I just had something on my mind I want to talk about, so I figured, get on here, just make a video just to, put something out because I've been so busy. A lot of you, who watch the channel know that in addition to my regular job and, the reselling and everything on the side that I do, I also have a side mowing business since I bought the lawnmower. I'm up to 6 clients right now, and I gained a couple more this season. Last year was my first year doing it, and I've been so busy. I don't even know how to explain to y'all how busy I've been. I haven't had a chance to really list anything. I did have a few orders go out this morning. I do get orders here and there that, when they come through, I package them up and ship them out. Sorry for the mess behind me. I know, this is kind of like the area where I, store everything and it's kind of piling up. I've got boxes and stuff, but I've been so busy just trying to keep up with the mowing. In addition to when I get off my regular job, and we've had a lot of rain, and that's got me behind, and it seems like I'm just now catching up from that. We had I don't know, it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago, it just rained nonstop for every day it seemed like for a week, or whenever it did stop raining, it was still too wet to mow. So I finally got everybody caught up, and now it's like I'm still not behind, but everybody's needing cut again because everything's growing so fast, and then it's kind of raining on and off today, and that rain and this, how it is, the sun and the summertime, everything, the grass just grows. So I'm in the thick of it right now. So at some point, I know during the fall it's going to slow down. Once some of the people that I cut, they and when the fall starts coming around and then moving into the winter, obviously there'll be a break. But I don't know how much I'm going to be able to post between now and then. Ideally, I would like, I've said this multiple times, I would like to post a video a week, but right now I'm not going to even say anything like that because I just don't know how I can realistically do that. So I'll show y'all here a couple of the orders that I went to the post office and mailed off today. This first one here, this is an oyster knife. I think I got one left. I need to redo that post and put, I had 2 that came. This was one of the things that came in that lot of this stuff from the hardware store that I told y'all about in one of the previous videos. So one of these sold. And the second item was one of the tool, it's a socket. It came also from the hardware store, and it's just a single socket. So that was the 2 orders I sent out this morning. Like I said, the orders are they come here and there. They're not consistent, but I'm thankful to be getting any orders just to kind of stay active because I've been neglecting the reselling stuff so bad because I didn't really anticipate, how much this mowing was going to, take up my time, and it's, if you guys have done it, if anybody out there, you guys, gals, whatever, if you've done it, then but if you haven't, if you're thinking about doing it, man, it seems like it never stops. Now, if you have a crew of people, you and 2 or 3 other people, whatever, I'm sure you can probably get, yards done a lot faster, so it doesn't feel like that. But for me, by myself, and and some of the yards that I do are pretty big, and then there's a lot of weed eating, and then it's just a lot, and then it takes several hours to get one done, and it's one a day. I don't think there was a day when I had just a little bit left to finish on one. I went to finishing it when I went to another one and got it done that day. That was one of the smaller ones, the smallest one I have pretty much, and that was it. That's as close as I come. Getting 2 done in a day, I can't do that. So anyway, I don't want to ramble on about that. I just kind of wanted to explain to y'all why I haven't been posting. But what I want to talk about today is something that it came to me actually on the way home. I worked late. I was there after dark at the place I was finishing up yesterday. There was some other little landscaping things that the client wanted done. So I was so tired. It rained yesterday during the day. It stopped raining by the time I got there in the evening, but it was just like a sweltering heat after it rains. And in Louisiana, you get that like really humid. So it didn't take long. I was dripping in sweat. I mean, I felt my shirt hanging. When you're wet, it feels like you got rained on or something. Your clothes are pulling out. I felt that like the whole time I was wearing my pants, my shirt, everything. So I was really tired, and I drove home last night, and I was just thinking about something that it really never occurred to me, and I just kind of wanted to, present this or throw this out there for any of you who maybe you're going through the same thing, or or maybe never considered this either, like I did, or like I didn't actually. And I don't know if you want to call this like an epiphany, or just revelation, or just I don't know. I think maybe sometimes God speaks to us in certain ways just by giving us ideas in our head, ways of thinking about things or looking at things a different way. But when it comes to prayer, and as I lay this out, if anybody out there, if you have a different opinion or different opinion about this stuff than I do, or if you see it a different way or a different mindset, or anything like that, drop in the comments. I would love to know what you think, or if you believe the same thing I do, or if you look at it from a different perspective, or anything else like that. I think that would be cool to share with other people. So because I think in this this journey that we're all in, that's what it's about. God is obviously in control, and he's over everything. But there's times when when we like if we could have what we wanted, obviously we would have like a direct conversation with God, just one-on-one, just like you and any other person would. But sometimes that's something that or not. I don't want to say sometimes, but that just isn't a reality for us. We can't just we can pray, and I know that I've heard people tell stories about God directly spoke to them in an audible voice, and I'm not saying anybody's lying or anything like that, but I haven't personally had that experience, so I don't know really how to take that or whatever. I think God speaks to us, but it's in subtle ways, and it's not like an audible voice like some of the people in the Bible heard him, Moses, or whoever, he was speaking directly to them through the thunder or whatever, like in the sky, a voice, an audible voice. But so the fact that we can't do that, I think that dialogue between believers and just helping each other out to wrestle through things. I mean, I don't want to call it wrestle. Sometimes it's just a matter of whether it's not even a wrestling thing. It's just a perspective thing, and just sharing perspectives and stories and testimonies and things like that. So, and when it comes to praying for whatever it is, I know everybody out there has their own prayers, and no two people's prayers are exactly the same in exactly the same way, probably. But I don't know. There's been stages. Obviously, we go through stages in life, and I remember different stages of my life where I would pray, and I would ask for these things, and you look at it from a perspective based on what what resonates, because I hate to say what you've heard, because there's chances that we've all sat and, if you've been going to church since you were a child, and you sat through sermons where somebody actually said something that years later you feel like you kind of just heard, but it didn't resonate with you. Maybe sometimes in church we're human, or in that moment when the person was talking, maybe we were distracted or what, it just didn't sink in. So I don't like to use like the term heard before, but I feel like it just kind of resonates with you at a certain time, wherever you're at, and what stage you're at in your life, and go through what phases you go through, and how your brain, it processes information, and just based on the experiences and all that you're going through or that you've had. So I can remember thinking back, back when I used to pray for things, and it was based on what I was taught, and you pray, and then there's other things you can do. You fast, and things like that you do, and you speak to God, and you be earnest about your prayers, and be faithful, and have faith in Him, and all that stuff. And then I remember at a certain point in my life where I started trying to, I don't want to say find common ground, but relate, I guess, like looking into the Bible, like who can I really relate to? Look, of all the stories that we know of the Bible, and the people, that the Bible tells us about, and their, whatever happened in their life, or whatever the snapshot that we see, that we're told about. And I started thinking, who of all the characters can I relate to about, my prayer life, and, what I'm praying for. And, even what I was praying for back then is the same thing I'm praying for now. It's seems like it's been my whole life, these things that I'm praying for. But I remember the story of Hannah, just, again, I'm sure when I was little I heard the story of Hannah. I'm positive. It's, probably a lot of times, but I remember, I don't know how many years ago it was, but I remember at a certain point, the story of Hannah just kind of like, it was like a refreshing, not like I never heard it before, but it was, like I said, it was, maybe resonated more. I was saying that earlier, just certain times in your life, but I started thinking, I think Hannah's story, because it tells us in the Bible she prayed for so long. And we don't know how long, but a long time. And she prayed, she wept sorely. She was asking for, this, a son. That was her prayer. But, it tells us in the Bible that she was constantly praying. She went year after year, there in Shiloh in Ephesus at the temple. And, and she was praying over and over. And then she would, every time she would have her prayer moments there, she would go back, and, and then she would have to, deal with life. And, the other, wife had children, and it was even almost like digging a knife in, that she didn't, because that's what she was praying for. And it went on for a long time. And then, so that I can resonate with, just constantly, year after year, and you feel like that your prayers aren't being heard or not being answered. And I know Job went through stuff, so I mean, it could kind of be related to Job as well. Job's story is a little bit different, in my opinion, just because of all the things he had in the beginning, like where he was in the beginning, and then to lose it, and then it was getting it all back. So it was a little bit different story there. But anyway, you can look at Job the same way, just the praying that went through, all of what he went through. But I think Hannah, to me, was, one that stuck out, like, and we're told in the Bible, the reason why that story is presented to us. It's the, God was pleased with her faithfulness, her continuing to pray, the not giving up. And, the day that, when it finally happened, Eli was there, and he saw her. And if you don't know the story, you can go read in Hannah chapter 1, and he thought she was drunk, because she was so sad that she was praying, but she was like praying, but nothing was even coming out. When you're so sad and you're just, you're crying, but nothing's coming out, like audibly. So that's how bad she was, hurting. And he thought she was drunk or whatever, and then she said no. She told him she was, praying for this, and he told her, go, go in peace. God has heard your prayers, essentially. And that was it. Like, that was the moment. I don't know. And I've asked, pastors and things like that in my life. Would you think that because Eli interceded for her on her behalf, spoke to God, that in that moment, that's why God heard her prayer? Or do you think that at that moment, that's when God had decided He was going to answer her prayer? It was coming regardless. Eli just happened to be there to let her know, hey, it's done, whatever. And then, like I said, the next, she went home that night and then, conceived. So, but, and that's what I've been trying to, model myself after that, because like I said, that resonated with me the most. But the thought that occurred to me, on the way home last night was, I started thinking, and I don't know that, like I said, for a fact that this is the right way, and I'm not trying to, present this to you like this is the right way. It's just something that washed over me, and it kind of made me think like, wait a minute, maybe I need to I've been doing this for so long, and maybe I need to, this other thing that's coming to me, I need to go this route, and I'm not trying to get away from, the praying. And that's one thing, sometimes when I've thought that before, things like this, I would think, oh, I don't want to stop though, because then I won't be able to consistently continue like Hannah and the faithfulness in that. And I don't know how to make it, add up with, because this, what I'm about to get into is like almost the complete opposite of that. But so how, discrepancy wise, but what I think, and this is my opinion, you can tell me if you think something different, is I think in the Old Testament, there's several things we can look back to, that ways things were done, or just, things that, were, not rules even, but just, like this was how, God wanted, things done, and, whatever. And then when the New Testament, when Jesus comes, he didn't come to abolish all that. He even said that, but, he come to fulfill it. But he also did lay down some new, more clarified standards, And what I think maybe is with Hannah in the Old Testament, being that was something that was an Old Testament thing, and in that time, that's the way it was, it was done. That's the way it was okay, at that point, because like, and I'll go ahead and present the verse right here that is kind of the foundation of this, and this, this thought or this belief, that whatever you want to call it. You can see right here, it's Mark 11:24, and I have two versions. I'm not. There's a lot of versions out there. I put kind of like what I feel the two most popular, but it's it's the same verse, and it talks about here in this verse that when you ask for something, believe that you've received it. Like when you ask for something, you pray for whatever it is. When you pray, then you're supposed to live as if you've received it, and then it says, then it will be given to you, or then you shall have it. Okay, or that's the way it reads. So if I looking at this, and I often I've thought about this, and I've said, well, with Hannah, she just kept on praying, and just it's like I've struggled with them. Like, well, maybe how was Hannah not doing this? This is what the Bible calls us to do. But like I said, I think it's because in the Old Testament, in Hannah's day, in that time, this is before, this is something that Jesus told them, and when he was, with his disciples, and if this is somewhere in the Old Testament as well, I don't know. I don't recall ever seeing it. This is a New Testament idea here, but maybe this is one of those things where Jesus says, okay, I'm laying out something, and I want you to move forward with this. So what came to me last night was, I was thinking, you know what? Because I've been, this along with, identifying with Hannah and trying to live that way, and be persistent and consistent and faithful in praying like Hannah did. This verse would always pop into my mind, and I'm like, it kind of caused like some issues, but I'm like, man, I gotta keep praying like Hannah did, and just keep asking for it. But then I would hear this, and there are people out there, and I know some of it's, if you're people believe in different religions and things like that, I understand, but manifesting, I hear people say that, and then some people are not even religious, but they believe in just manifesting through, I don't know, the universe or whatever it is. As a believer, I feel that anything out there, and I'm not gonna sit here and tell you or whatever that manifesting is, real or not real, or have that debate, or like especially the way it's presented. Sometimes when it's like a universe manifesting, whatever. I'm not even going to get into that, but I think that what this is saying right here is that it's the same thing that maybe somebody's experiencing. Say somebody is doing that and they think, oh, I'm manifesting something. It's actually, in my opinion, I think that's what this is. It's the Bible. It's still God that's telling us that. Maybe they're just not giving the credit where credit's due when it comes to how that thing came about. And maybe they think they manifested it on their own, but really it was God, and God lays out this, this idea right here. So when you pray, he's telling you to live like you already have it. Well, what I started thinking about last night was, okay, with this verse, it just hit me. Wait a minute, God's our Father. I started thinking about just, in Hannah's situation, the moment that Eli told her it's done, obviously that second, she didn't have, the thing, but she believed, okay, it's done. And so, it didn't take very long after that, but it's coming. There's a period where, like you're told it's coming, and then until it comes to fruition. And I started thinking, okay, well, what this is saying, I believe, is for us to, when you pray for something, this verse here is telling us that that's just like if God was to say, okay, cool, I got you, I'm gonna answer that prayer. So it's a confirmation that you're gonna get what you asked for. So in that waiting period between the time that you found out, okay, that thing is gonna be given to you, until it's at hand, I started thinking, even from childhood, as early as I can in my mind, go back to the earliest, I can think of. Was there, what moments in my life where there was something I wanted, there was something I prayed for that, maybe it was, but when I say prayed for, not, I don't want to, again, this is something that's between, you and someone else. I don't want to make this, just like another prayer, but something you wanted really bad or whatever, and then you ask someone. It can be mom, friend, or whatever it was in your life, a person. Hey, can we do this or whatever? Because you didn't have the ability to do it on your own. You needed someone else to do it, and they told you, yeah, okay, we'll do that. Just or any moment where you knew something was coming that you were anticipating, that you knew it was coming, but it wasn't at hand yet, and and I started thinking, okay, well, what did it look like to live in that moment where the thing you're asking for, the thing you want, isn't at hand yet? And I think the way that it looked, like when I say what it looked like, was it was happy. You were excited when you found out the thing that you asked your mom, whoever it was, for, and it could be any kind of experience like that. When you've been told yes, that something you want, it's going to happen. It's not at hand yet, but it's coming. That anticipation, that happiness, and that's how I need to live, and not continually, it's like doubting or it's not here yet. Let me ask again. Let me keep asking, because I challenge you, any of you out there, if you're young enough where you still live at home, like if you want to go on a trip, you need to ask your parents, that kind of thing. Or if you're an adult, it could be a friend, a colleague, anybody. I challenge you, ask someone. So you need someone to do something with you or for you, whatever it is. And then when they say yeah, keep asking and see how that works. Just stop and think about that for a minute. how annoyed they're going to get, how fast they're going to get annoyed and lose patience. And I think that, God, how incredibly patient He is and how loving, way more than we could ever be. But like, that's kind of what I've been doing. It's just, if I was to have done that to my mom when she told me, yeah, we're going, if I would have kept asking, I guarantee it wouldn't have took long before it would have went, to, if you ask me again, we're not going. It wouldn't have took long. I told you yes, you keep asking. So, and I challenge you just to do that and see how long it takes. So I think that's what God wants us to do, and that's what this verse means. And like I said, hearing, I've seen videos, but one recently is particular that was in my mind that about manifesting and what the person was saying, and I don't believe in that. Obviously, I'm a believer in God, and I think that He does things. So whether somebody wants to say that they're manifesting through the universe, I believe that it's God that's giving you that. But I think, like this Bible says, or this Bible verse says, there's something He wants us to do when we ask. It's not just ask and then, not have faith and just keep asking. And like what I've been doing, I'm kind of hanging my hat on the Hannah thing. Well, I'm just going to do what she did, just keep asking and ask every day, weep sorely in my prayers. But I think this is saying something different. So let me know how y'all feel about that. If if you have a different opinion on this, or maybe different experiences in your prayer life, I would love to know. So I feel like maybe this could help, and if you have something to say also, that things like that can help someone else. We help each other. That's just kind of, I think, what we're supposed to do here. And I think talking through things like this is how that happens. So just let me know what y'all think. And I don't know when I'll be able to make another video. I don't even want to say, throw things out there because I don't know. I'm so busy right now. So we'll see. But until the next video, y'all take care. I hope everybody's doing well. And yeah. See y'all then.